We're going to be in, I guess we can dismiss anybody that is going to a class right now, but we're going to be in James chapter 2 in our class here today. And then we're going to also go back to Joshua chapter 2. So we'll spend the bulk of our time in Joshua chapter 2, and we'll do what we can to be a help and look at that passage a little bit. We're going to speak, James is going to speak about Rahab the harlot today. So we'll start here in James chapter 2. We'll finish up that chapter, just a few verses left there, and then we'll go back to Joshua chapter 2. So if you could just put a marker in there or hold your place there in Joshua 2, that'll be the bulk of our lesson. Excuse me, today. I had hope last week I didn't think I'd get as far as I did in my lesson, and it came down. All I had left was Rahab, and so I went home and worked on Rahab a little bit more. Excuse me. And it worked out, worked out really well. That I learned a lot of things this week about her. So let's look here in James chapter 2. And I just want to read you a couple of verses. We dealt last week with Abraham. James is here talking about being justified before God by faith and being justified before man by works. So he says, faith without works is dead. So there needs to be something genuine, something real in our lives when we accept Christ. And he talked about Abraham all through the Bible. It talks 74 times he's mentioned. It always talks about he was saved by faith. He put his faith in the Lord. He believed God. It was counted to him for righteousness. And that's all that's necessary for our salvation, is to believe in God, to put our faith in him, and to follow his commands, do what God's asked us to do, is to call upon him. And so we're justified before God by faith. But then he says also, Abraham's the works that he did wrought with his faith. And so we talked about how let's just read here a few verses. In verse 21, verse 20, he says, "But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead?" So when we get saved, have true faith, there ought to be some works in our life. And without faith without works is dead. He said, "Was not Abraham our father," in verse 21, "justified by works when he had offered up Isaac his son upon the altar?" So was it 20 or 30 years after he had received the Lord, he put his faith in the Lord, he became a child of God. 20 to 30 years later, he offered up his son Isaac. Remember, he got ready to shove the knife in and had him on the altar, and God stayed his hand, caught a ram in the thicket. And he said, "Now I know that thou fearest me." So his work of what he did with his son Isaac proved he had real, genuine faith. He believed God. He did what God told him to do. Even though it didn't make any sense to him, he did what God told him to do, and that proved that he was saved. So then he goes on here, and he says then, the scripture was fulfilled then, verse 23, which saith, "Abraham believed God, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness. He was called a friend of God." Then he says, "You see then how that a man thought that by works a man is justified and not by faith only." So we're not saved or made right before God by our works. We do that by faith. But our works justify the men. So, they've got to be saved. Their faith is genuine. Their faith is real. They're obeying God. They're doing what he's asked them to do. And he was called a friend of God. So now he's going to give one more example here in verse 25 of James 2. "Likewise," here's another example. Now remember, Abraham is a father of the Jewish race, nation of Israel, and so forth. Rahab is a Gentile. And so that includes all of us here. So verse 25, "Likewise also was not Rahab the harlot justified by works when she had received the messengers and sent them out another way." And then, "For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also." So let's go back here and look at Rahab a little bit in Joshua chapter 2. She was a harlot. Everywhere pretty much she's mentioned in the Bible, it's Rahab the harlot. Even after she put her faith in God, she was still called Rahab the harlot. That's what she was known for. And her life portrays a picture of us, of how any person can come to Christ, no matter what their background or their position in life or sinfulness of their life. Anyone can come to the Lord. She's called the harlot. In chapter 2 of Joshua, in verse 1 there, Joshua the son of Nun sent out of Shittim 2 men to spy secretly, saying, "Go view the land, even Jericho." And they went and came into the harlot's house named Rahab and lodged there. So she's referred to as a harlot. And so these 2 spies came and lodged in her house. Now, as we go down through here, we're going to find out that she hid these men. Let's just read through him. Verse 2 says, "It was told the king of Jericho, saying, Behold, there came in hither tonight of the children of Israel to search out the country. And the king of Jericho sent unto Rahab, saying, Bring forth the men that are come to thee, which are entered into thine house, for they be come to search out all the country. And the woman took the 2 men and hid them, and said thus, There came men unto me, but I wist not whence they were." Verse 5, and it came to pass about the time of shutting of the gate, when it was dark, that the men went out. Whither the men went, I wot not, and pursue after them quickly, for ye shall overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof of the house, and hid them in the stalks of flax, which she had laid in order upon the roof. In verse 7, the men pursued after them the way to Jordan unto the fords. And as soon as they were pursued after them, were gone out, they shut the gate. So she, again, is called a harlot. The Bible tells us in the Hall of Fame, or whatever, in Hebrews 11, verse 31, by faith, the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believed not, when she had received the spies in peace. And so she was called the harlot again there, and because we just read about it in James 2:25. So the reproach that stuck to her name, though she repented and though she reformed her life, still stuck with her. Our reputation sticks to us and sticks with us in our life. So how did she come to believe in God? First thing she did was she heard. Remember, James is saying here, don't be hearers only, but be doers of the word. So she heard. Here in Joshua 2:10, 2 verse 8, we just read down to verse 7 and verse 8. And before they were laid down, she came up to them upon the roof, and she said unto the men, I know that the Lord hath given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. For we have heard, first you got to hear, we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and he did unto the 2 kings of the Amorites that were on the other side, Jordan, Sihon, and Og, whom ye utterly destroyed. And as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt. Neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and in earth beneath. So here in verse 10 and 11, she says, we've heard. Verse 11, as soon as we'd heard these things, the idea of hearing here is to understand, to listen to these things, to hearken unto them, to pay attention. Effective hearing, and they understood what had taken place. The Bible tells us in Job 42:5, I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now mine eye seeth thee. So what did Rahab the harlot hear? Well, in verse 10, she heard how the Lord had dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt. So she'd heard about this great story, how God had rolled back the waters. They'd come through on dry land. He'd put the waters back up, and it had consumed all of the Egyptians that came behind them. She'd heard about that. And then secondly, what did you hear? What you did unto the 2 kings of the Amorites, Sihon and Og. So that's back in Numbers 21. So she'd heard what had taken place to these 2 kings. So Rahab heard that you're never going to get saved till you hear the good news. You hear what's taken place. And James is trying to get this point across. It isn't just hearing these things, it's hearing them and doers. Don't just be a hearer, but also be a doer. And then secondly, Rahab heard caused her to fear God. Verse 9 again, And she said unto the men, I know that the Lord hath given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea and so forth. And as soon as we'd heard these things, our hearts did melt. Neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and in earth below. So what she heard caused her to fear God. She said in verse 9, I know the Lord has given you the land. And then she said, your terror has fallen upon us. There's an awesome dread that has been inspired upon our people because of what God, your God, has done for you. This fear fell upon them. It's like we're going to see here pretty soon when they go in to take Jericho, the walls will come falling down. This idea of falling upon, it's just like a wall falling down. And then in verse 9, the inhabitants faint because of these. They're melting. They're faint-hearted. They're trembling. They're shaking. So God, what she heard about God caused her to melt, caused her to tremble, caused her to have fear, caused her to say, oh, this is a mighty God. This is the real God. This is the one true God. And they begin to faint, and God softens the earth with showers, just like he does a man's heart, and he causes panic-stricken fear to the heathen. In verse 11, she said, as soon as we heard these things, our heart did melt. So it began she came under conviction. It began to dissolve and get discouraged, and she was wasting away. So her heart was giving her problems. It's like an outside force causing the melting. In Psalm 97:5, God talks of the hills melted like wax at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the Lord of the whole earth. Micah says in Micah 1:4, and the mountains shall be molten unto him, and the valleys shall be cleft as wax before the fire, and as water that are poured down a steep place. Rahab's heart melted. It softened. And when I got saved, I had been hearing for years this story about Jesus, about his love for us, about his death, about his burial. But one day it just became so real to me. My heart melted. I came under conviction, and I conceded. I gave in to what he said I ought to do, is to call upon his name and be saved. I surrendered to him, just like her heart melted. This is how Rahab, a harlot, a prostitute, this is how she got saved. She'd heard about the Lord, and what she'd heard about him caused her to come under conviction. He says in verse 11, neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you. They were like they were out of breath. They lost it. They had no more vigor in their life. God's power overwhelmed her, and her spirit failed her. And I remember sitting in the office one day at the Christian school in Florida the day that I got saved, and I was listening. Someone had called into the secretary there at the church, doubting their salvation, and Becky and I had just taught phys ed, and we were at the Christian school they had there, and we were sitting in the office with the secretary, and so this person had called in on the phone that she was going through the whole gospel with them, trying to assure them whether or not they were really saved. And I looked at Becky. My heart started to melt when I heard all that. It's like I was hearing it for the first time. And I looked at her and I said, I'm not saved. She goes, what? I said, I'm not saved. I've never really called upon the Lord to be saved. And that was the day that I got saved. His love and really the fear of what's going to happen to us when we die if we don't know him overwhelmed me. And his power overwhelmed me. And she then confessed the Lord. Verse 11 towards the end, for the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and in the earth beneath. So she put her faith in the Lord. Even though she was a prostitute, even though she was a harlot, even though she had a terrible life, she believed in the Lord, and she called out to him, and she confessed him as the Lord. And then the third thing that happened to her, she not only heard, and what she heard caused her to fear God and call upon him and acknowledge him and surrender to him. Then she recognized her fate. That's another thing that will help us to come to the Lord here in verse 12. Now, therefore, I pray you swear unto me by the Lord, since I have showed you kindness, that you will also show kindness unto my father's house and give me a true token. He's going to give her token here soon. And that you will save alive my father and my mother and my brethren and my sisters and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. So she now recognized her fate. She knew what her destiny would be, her final end, her final outcome. She and her family were doomed to die. She asked pardon for herself and her family. Verse 12 says, now therefore, show kindness and give me a token, a signal like the rainbow that was placed in the sky, and like the stones that Joshua put in the Jordan River. Verse 13, she said, save alive my father and my mother and my brethren and my sisters and all that they have. And I was thinking this week about my sister. She's in heaven now. She'll have her first Christmas up there. My brother's up there. Actually, three of my brothers are up there. One only lived about 3 months, and my younger brother and my older brother, my sister, my mom, my dad, they're all up there in heaven. We want our whole house to be saved, don't we? We don't want to say, Lord, would you save, 4 of the West Grills, but never mind about that other one, We want everybody there, don't we, to be with the Lord. And so she said, will you deliver our lives from death? So she heard. What she heard caused her to fear God. She recognized her fate, her destiny, and then she relied upon her faith. Look at verse 14. And the men answered her, our life for yours, if ye utter not this our business. And it shall be, when the Lord hath given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with you. That's what she had asked. That's what she wanted to do. Back in Genesis 47, I think verse 9, that's all, I think it was Moses was dying, and he said, deal kindly with me. I just want you to deal kindly and truly with me. Verse 15, then she let them down by a cord through the window, for her house was upon the town wall, and she dwelt upon the wall. In verse 16, she said unto them, get you to the mountain, lest the pursuers meet you, and hide yourselves there 3 days until the pursuers be returned, and afterward may ye go your way. Verse 17, the men said unto her, we will be blameless of this oath, this thine oath, which thou hast made us swear. Verse 18, behold, when we come into the land, thou shalt bind this line, you shall bind this line of scarlet thread in the window, which thou didst let us down by. And thou shalt bring thy father and thy mother and thy brethren and all thy father's household home unto thee. And it shall be that whosoever shall go out of the doors of thy house into the street, his blood shall be upon his head, and we will be guiltless. And whosoever shall be with thee in the house, his blood shall be on our head, if any man be upon him. And if thou utter this our business, then we will be quit of thine oath which thou hast made us to swear. And she said, according unto your words, so be it. And she sent them away, and they departed, and she bound the scarlet line in the window. She bound that scarlet line there in the window. It says, I put a few notes I had copied and put in here. It says, in return for Rahab sparing their lives, the spies gratefully consented to her request for protection. Rahab and the other members of her father's household would be spared death in the day of Israel's assault on Jericho on 3 conditions. 1, they should remain in the house during the assault, the very house which was a haven for the spies. 2, a cord of scarlet thread or yarn should hang from the very window through which the spies were let down by a strong rope. And then 3, the mission of the spies must be kept secret. On Rahab's acceptance of the conditions, the spies departed into the wilds of the nearby mountain, while she lost no time in binding the scarlet thread in the window, sealing her deliverance. This was the token. Says, you put that scarlet thread, that line in the window. This person goes on, what a beautiful picture of the believer's salvation. very much like the earlier experience of the Israelites in Egypt when God said to them, "When I see the blood, I will pass over you." When Joshua's army saw the scarlet thread, they would spare the lives of all that were in the house. Some Bible students see in the scarlet thread a symbol of the redemptive blood of Christ. A very clear illustration of salvation in this story is the deliverance for those being found in the house, verse 19. So verse 18 is an interesting thing as I studied. Thou shalt bind this line of scarlet thread in the window, which I can't read my writing to, which thou did let us down by. Now, this little word line, every word in the Bible is so important. I mean, it's not just, a whole big chapter story. Every word is so important. This little word line, this is the first time, this line of scarlet, this is the first time this word occurs in the Bible. Every other time, this word is translated hope. That doesn't make sense, does it? Line and hope. But this line was her hope of salvation. This line was her way of being delivered. It's defined as a cord, hope, expectation, or ground for hope. Hope for the future. This thin, blood red line constituted her hope for the future, a scarlet hope. Now look ahead in chapter 6 here for just a moment. And this is going to be what's going to happen when they come to take Jericho out. I'm just trying to tell you, she believed in God before she did any of these things. She had faith in him. And then because she had a true faith in God, then she did some works. She hid the spies and the flax. She put the cord out for them to escape by. Then she put the line of scarlet down in the window as a token that that's where they were at. So in chapter 6, here's a great story where the walls come tumbling down. In chapter 6, and let's just read from verse 15. And it came to pass on the seventh day. Remember, they'd march around once a day for 6 days. On the seventh day, they were going to go around 7 times. On the seventh day, that they rose early about the dawning of the day and compassed the city after the same manner 7 times. Only on that day, they compassed the city 7 times. And it came to pass at the 7th time, when the priest blew the trumpets, Joshua said unto the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. And the city shall be accursed, even it and all they that are therein, to the Lord. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all that are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that were sent. And ye," in verse 18, "in any wise keep yourselves from the accursed thing, lest ye make yourselves a curse, when you take the accursed thing and make the camp of Israel a curse and trouble it. But all the silver and gold and vessels of brass and iron are consecrated unto the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord." So the people shouted when the priests blew with the trumpets, and it came to pass when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted with a great shout, and the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. Now, verse 21, "They utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, and ox and sheep and ass with the edge of the sword." Verse 22, "But Joshua had said unto the 2 men that had spied out the country, Go into the harlot's house, and bring out thence the woman, and all that she hath, as ye swear unto her. And the young men that were spies went in, and brought out Rahab, and her father, and her mother, and her brethren, and all that she had. And they brought out all her kindred, and left them without the camp of Israel. And they burnt the city with fire, and all that was therein, only the silver and the gold and the vessels of brass and iron, they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord." And verse 25, "And Joshua saved Rahab the harlot alive, and her father's household, and all that she had. And she dwelleth in Israel even unto this day, because she hid the messengers which Joshua sent to spy out Jericho." So she believed in the Lord, and then she did works to show that she believed in the Lord. I thought I wrote this little thing down. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. Hebrews 11:31 says, "By faith the harlot Rahab perished not. She wasn't slain along with them that believed not, when she had received the spies with peace." This was the work that proved that she had real faith. And that's what works do. They're not to merit favor with God. They're not to build up a war chest when you stand before him one day. Look at all I've done. They're not to save your soul. They're evidence that you are saved. And so the others believe not. Now, I want to finish up with this here. So James's second illustration in James 2 there is about Rahab. She was a notorious sinner. Yet she was listed in the earthly family of Christ in Matthew 1:5. And we just spoke about Hebrews 11:31. She was a woman of faith. She lived in Jericho, that condemned city. She believed the report. She heard about God. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. She also had assurance. Keep in mind that Rahab was a believer in the God of Israel before the two spies came to her house. It was not her reception and protection of two spies it was her reception and protection of the two spies that proved her faith in God. She risked her own life to identify herself with Israel. And because of her faith, proved by her works, she was delivered from the judgment in the fire of Jericho. And then I just want to read you this to finish this up. Sad to say, there are a multitude of professing Christians and church members who have a profitless, as we talked about last week, or an empty faith. They have a profession with their lips. They say, but their lives deny what they profess. Titus said, they profess that they know God, but in works they deny him. Real Christians are a peculiar people, zealous of good works. This does not mean that a true Christian never sins or fails to obey God, but it does mean that a true Christian does not make sinning the habit of his life. A true Christian bears fruit for God's glory and walks so as to please God. And in James 2, verse 26, the very last verse in chapter 2, he says this, for as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. So faith and works are both needed for life, just as the body needs a spirit for life. And so as we started last week, we need to examine our own selves, not everybody else, but our own selves. And if we have a faith that all we do is say and say and say, and we don't ever do anything, and that's profitless, then the empty ones, I believe in God, yet there's no works, there's no evidence of it. And so what we want to make sure is we have a real, genuine faith. And the way that's made manifest to men is by doing good works. And it shows them that we really know the Lord. And really, it shows us that we know the Lord if we're willing to do what he asks us to do. So, Father, help us today. We know, Lord, we're not saved by any works which we do. It's not according to works of righteousness we've tried to do, Lord, but you have saved us by your own Son's precious blood. And that's how we get saved. But Lord, once we are, we need to demonstrate through our good works that we really are saved. And this not only will be a good testimony to the world that our faith is true and genuine and real, but it will be to us personally, that we know that we're motivated now and our hearts melted before you, and we've surrendered to you, and we're willing to do whatever you put before us. So help us today, Lord. Again, we ask you to be with Jolene and her family at this time. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, we'll give you a little break for a few minutes here, and thank you for coming today. You don't know what to do with it? Here I am.